Good morning, everybody. We are reading today chapter 17 of Gathering Blue. Remember, you can look on Google and put free version of Gathering Blue, and you should be able to find a way to get access to a book if you want to read it. Get out a piece of paper, signpost long, send me a pic for extra credits. So, chapter 17, Gathering Blue. In 16, her and Thomas snuck in to go see Joe. And then, so they went and they saw Joe because Thomas had a key that fits all the doors. And then when Kira got back from visiting Joe, she realized she just kind of had a really hard moment, almost kind of like an Inmost Cave moment from the hero's journey, where she realizes that she's kind of like a prisoner, that she doesn't have freedom. So chapter 17. Thomas, I've worked hard all morning and you have too. Would you like to take a walk with me? There's something I want to see. It was midday and they both had eaten lunch. You want to go down and look at what the workmen are doing? I'll go with you, Thomas said, setting aside his carving tool he had just picked up. Kira noticed again with admiration the intricate work on the large Singer staff. Thomas had been smoothing the rough spots from the worn ancient carvings, reshaping the infinitesimal small edges and curves. It was very similar to the work Kira herself had been assigned, the repair of the Singer's robe. And the entire top of the staff was undecorated. It was smoothed, uncarved wood, and in the same way the expanse across the shoulders of the robe was untouched cloth. Kira's brook was approaching with unadored expanse, and so was Thomas's, she realized. What will you carve there? She asked, pointing to the undecorated part. I don't know. They said they would tell me. She watched as he carefully laid the staff across the table. Actually, she told him, if you want to look at what the workmen are doing, I'll go with you later. But that's not where I had in mind. Will you go with me first where I want? Thomas nodded good naturally. Where's that? He asked. The fen, Kira told him. He looked at her quizzically. That filthy place? Why would you want to go there? I've never been there, and I want to see where Joe lived, Thomas. And Matt does still, he reminded her. Yes, Matt too. I wonder where he is, Thomas. Kira said uneasy. I haven't seen him in 2 days. Have you? Thomas shook his head. Maybe he found another source of food, he suggested, laughing. Matt could point out where Joe lived. Maybe I could even bring something back for her. Maybe she had toys. Did they let you bring stuff here when you came here, Thomas? He just shook his head. Just my bits of wood. They didn't want me distracted. Kira sighed. She's so small she should have a toy. Maybe you could carve her a doll, and I could stitch a little dress for it. I could, I guess, Thomas agreed. He handed Kira her walking stick. Let's go, he said. We'll probably find Matt along the way, or he'll find us. Together, the pair made their way out of the edifice, across the plaza, and down the crowded lane. At the weaving shed, Kira paused, greeted the women, and asked about Matt. Haven't seen him, and good riddance, too, one of the workers replied. That useless scamp. Where are you coming back, Kira? Another asked. We could use your help, and when you're old enough to be on the looms now. With your mother gone, you must need the work. But the other woman laughed loudly and pointed towards Kira's clean new clothes. She doesn't need us anymore. The looms began to click and move again, and Kira moved away. Uh-oh. Excuse me. Nearby, she heard an oddly familiar, oddly frightening sound, a low growl. Quickly, she glanced around, half expecting to see a menacing dog or something worse. But the sound had come from a cluster of women near the butcher's. They burst into laughter when they saw her looking. She saw Vendara in the middle. Uh-oh. The scarred woman turned her back on Kira and she heard the growl again, a human imitation of a beast. Kira lowered her head and limped past them, ignoring the cruel laughter. Thomas had gone ahead and she could see him far beyond the butcher's. He had stopped near a group of boys playing in the mud. Don't know, said as one approached. Maybe give me some coins and I can find him. I asked them about Matt, Thomas exclaimed, but they said they haven't seen him. Do you suppose he might be sick? Kira asked, worried. His nose is always running. Maybe we should have never cleaned him up. He was accustomed to that layer of dirt. The boys, slapping their bare feet in the mud, were listening. Matt's the strongest of the strong, one said. He never be sick. A smaller one wiped his own runny nose on the back of his hand. His mom be yelling at him. I heard her. And she threw the rock at him too, and he laughed at it and ran off. Sorry, I lost my spot. When? Kira asked the runny-nosed boy. Don't know. Maybe 2 days ago. It were, chimed in another. 2 days ago. I seed it too. His mom chucked a rock at him 'cause he took in some food. He said he was going on a journey. He's all right, Kira, Thomas reassured him, and they walked on. He takes care of himself better than most adults here. This is where we turn. She followed him down the unfamiliar narrow lane, and the huts were closer together here, closer to the edge of the woods, and they were shaded by trees and the smell of dankness and rot. They came to a foul-smelling stream and crossed it. It was a slippery, primitive bridge of logs. Thomas took her hand and helped her. It was treacherous with her bad leg, and she feared slipping in the water, for it was quite shallow, but it was clogged with filth. On the other side of the stream, beyond the thick, poisonous oleander bushes that were a small danger to tykes, lay the area known as the fen. In some ways, it was similar to the place where Kira had called home. The same cots, close together, the incessant wailing of infants, the stench of smoky fires, rotting food, and unwashed humans. But it was darker here, with the trees thick overhead, festering with dampness and an odor of ill health. Why must there be such a horrible place? Kira whispered to Thomas. Why do people have to live like this? We could log that as a tough question. So Kira's asking this because she notices a clear difference between her community and the community of the Fen. Because it's almost like she's beginning to realize a little bit of inequality. She doesn't know the reason why, of course, but she's noticing that there is inequality and questioning why they have to live like that. It's how it is, he replied, frowning. It's always been. A sudden vision slipped into Kira's mind. The robe. The robe told how it had always been, and what Thomas had said was not true. There had been times, such long times ago, when people's lives had been golden and green. Why could there not be such times again, she began to say to him. Thomas, she suggested, you and I, we're the ones who fill in the blank places. Maybe we can make it different. Man, she is starting to just make a difference. Like, what I like about Kira, is she wants to take action right away. She's so determined and resilient as a character, actually. I see her as a stronger character than Jonas, right? Jonas took almost the entire book to realize that things were wrong and that he needed to make a difference. And here she is suggesting action and rebellion right now. But she saw how he was looking at her. His look was skeptical and amused. What are you talking about? He didn't understand. Perhaps he never would. Nothing, Kira told him, shaking her head. As they walked, an ominous quiet fell. Kira became aware of eyes. Kira stood in the shadowed doorways, or women's dad stood in the shadowed doorways, watching them suspiciously. Kira limped along, trying to find ways around the garbage-strewn puddles in the path, and found the hostile stairs. It made no sense, she knew, to walk without a destination through an unfamiliar, malevolent place. Thomas, she murmured, we must ask someone. He stopped, and she stopped beside him. They stood uncertain in the path. What's your purpose? A hoarse voice called from an open window. Kira looked and saw a green lizard slither into the vines in the sill. Behind the fluttering wet leaves, a gaunt-faced woman holding a tyke in her arms, looking out. There seemed to be no men around. She realized the men, mostly draggers and diggers, would all be working, and she felt relieved remembering how they grabbed at her the day of the weapons. Kira made through her way through the thorny underbrush and went closer to the window. Through it, she could see that the dark interior of the cot there were several other tykes, half naked, stood staring dull-eyed and frightened towards her. I'm looking for a boy called Matt, she said politely to the woman. Do you know where he lives? What you be giving me for it? Giving you? I'm sorry, Kira told her, startled by the question. I don't have anything to give. Nary food? No, I'm sorry, she held her hands out, showing them empty. I have an apple, Thomas approached, and to Kira's surprise, a dark red apple from his pocket. I was saving it from lunch, he explained to Kira in a low voice and held it toward the women. Her thin arm reached out from an open window and grabbed the fruit. She bit at it and began to turn away. Wait! The cot where Matt lives. Can you tell us, please? The woman turned back, her mouth full. Further down, she said, chewing noisily. The infant in their arms grabbed at the bitten apple and she shoved its hands away. She gestured with her head. There is a busted tree in the front. Kira nodded. And please, one more thing, she pleaded. Can you tell us about the tyke named Joe? The woman's face changed, and Kira found it hard to interpret the look. For a moment, a brief flicker of joy had washed across the thin, embittered face. Then hopelessness replaced it. Something weird is going on, and we should be getting answers soon. I feel like huge bombs are going to be dropped really soon. The little singing girl, the woman said in her voice in a hoarse whisper. She be tooken. They tooken her away. She turned around abruptly and disappeared into the shadows of the interior of her cot. Her children began to cry and to claw at her for the food. So this kind of shows that they're starving. There's a lot of inferences. Gaunt means like you can see when someone has a gaunt face, you can see all their bones. It's a sign of starvation. The kids have like dull eyes, right? Listless kind of dull eyes show starvation, right? Like even in its further progress, thin, bony. So this community is by all means not doing well at all. The gnarled tree was dying, almost split to the ground and rotting. Perhaps it once borne fruit. Now its limbs were broken, dangling at odd angles, punctuated by an occasional wisp of brown leaves. The small cot behind the tree looked damaged and neglected too, but there were voices inside, a woman speaking roughly and sharp-tongued children answering her in an angry, spiteful tone. Thomas knocked. The voices began quiet, and finally the door opened slightly. Who you be? The woman asked abruptly. We're friends of Max, Thomas told her. Is he inside? Is he all right? Who it be, Mom? The child's voice called. The woman peered at Thomas and Kira slightly, not answering. Finally, Thomas called the woman. Is Matt at home? What's he done now? What you be wanting him for? The woman asked, her eyes glinting with mistrust. He runned off and he took in food too, a tyke called to him. His head thick with tousled, unkept hair appeared beside the woman. He pushed the door open wider. Kira looked in dismay at the cot's dark interior. A pitcher, overturned on the table, lay in a puddle of some thick liquid through which insects crawled. The tyke at the door pricked up his nose with one finger, scratching himself with the other hand, and stared at them. The woman coughed wetly and then spat something onto the ground. Do you know where he went? Kira asked, trying not to see how shocked she felt at the condition of these people. The woman shook her head and coughed again. Good rid to him, she said. She shoved the tyke to the side and pulled the heavy door closed. After a moment, Kira and Thomas turned away. Behind them, they heard the door open. Miss, I know where Matt go, the tyke's voice said. He emerged from the cot despite his mom's scolding voice and came to them. He was clearly Matt's brother. He had the same bright, mischievous eyes. They waited. What will you give me? Her finger went towards her nose again. Kira sighed. Life in the fen apparently was a series of barters. No wonder Matt had become such a clever manipulator and entrepreneur. She looked helplessly at Thomas. We don't have anything to give you, she exclaimed to the tyke. He eyed her appraisingly. How about that there, miss, he suggested, pointing to Kira's neck. She touched the thong that hung the polished stones. No, she told the tyke, and her fingers curled protectively around the stone. This is my mother's, and I can't give it to you. To her surprise, he nodded if that made sense to him. That there, then, he pointed to her hair. Kira remembered that she had tied it back this morning, as often she did, with a simple leather cord of no value. Quickly, she pulled it loose and held it out. The Kira grabbed it and thrust it into his pocket. It seemed to be a satisfactory payment. Our mom, she thrashed Matt so hard he was horrid bloody, and so him and Branchy, they go on a journey, and they not be coming back, not to the fen, the tyke announced. Matt, he got friends who be taking good care of him, not thrashing him never, and they give him food too. Uh-oh, that's them. Thomas laughed a little, and they make him take baths, he added, though the tyke just stared, not understanding the word. But he meant us, Kira pointed out, and we're the friends he meant. She was concerned. If he tried to come to us, where is he? It was 2 days ago he left here, and no one's seen him since. He knew the way, too. So this is we could log that as an aha moment. He meant us. We can log that as an aha moment. Just because in that moment, Kira realized that Thomas left to go live with them, but never returned. And it's been long enough that he should have been there a long time ago. Matt's brother interrupted her. Him and Branchy, they go someplace else first. He be getting a gifty for his friends. That be you, miss, and you. He looked at Thomas. They nodded. Matt said he get a gifty, makes a person like you best of all. A person like you best of all. Oh, I know what he went to go do. Kira sighed in exasperation. No, that's not the way it is. A gift she gave up. Never mind. Tell us where he went. Yeah, I was right. So I predicted that he was going to go get the plants for the color blue. Remember, that's in that place kind of far away. And here's my confirmation. Remember, as a good reader, you always make predictions about what's going to happen when you read. Even if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. You need to keep your brain engaged in the reading, making those predictions. He be getting some blue. Blue? What do you mean? Don't know, miss. But Matt, he said it. He'd be saying they got blue yonder, and he'd be getting you some. The women reappeared in the open doorway and called in a shrill, angry voice to the tyke, who retreated inside. Thomas and Kira turned away and began to retrace their steps on the muddy path back to their village. Silent watchers still lurked in doorways. The fetid air still hung humid. Kira whispered to Thomas, when Matt disappeared, I thought perhaps we would find him where he'd been taken to, like Joe. If he'd been taken, Thomas suggested, we know his whereabouts. He'd be there with us in the council edifice. Kira nodded, and he'd be with Joe. Maybe they have locked him up like her. He would have hated that. Maybe Matt would have found a way to get free, Thomas pointed out. Anyways, he said, helping Kira find the place around a puddle with a dead rat in it. They wouldn't want Matt, I'm afraid. They only want us for our skills, and he hasn't any. Oh, no. Kira thought of the impish boy, of his generosity, his laughter, his devotion to that little dog. She thought of him now wherever he was on his quest to bring a gift to friends. Oh, Thomas, she said, he does. He knows just how to make us smile and laugh. There seemed to be no hint of laughter or any history of this terrible place. Making her way through the squalor, Kira remembered Matt's infectious chortle. So chortle means laugh. She thought, too, of the clear purity of the small singer's voice and how the two children must have been the only elements of joy there. Now Joe had been taken away, and Matt was gone as well. She wondered where he could have journeyed all along, but for the dog to search for the blue. All right, we've got a couple chapters left. I'll be doing a reading all through this week, including Friday, even though we technically have no school on Friday. Taking a break this weekend and coming back on Monday, even though Monday is a holiday. So we will finish the book on Monday. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to another book who is going to be, it's called Refuge, and it's based around our last unit of learning. Miss you all. Wish I could be with you. Bye.